Welcome to the Outthinker podcast. Each week, we talk with forward-looking strategists and innovators that are challenging the status quo, leading the future of business, and shaping our world. I'm your host, Kyan Krippendorf, founder of the Outthinker Strategy Network. Andrew Binns is managing director and co-founder of ChangeLogic, a Boston-based strategic advisory firm. He works with CEOs, boards, and senior teams as they lead significant business change. He is the lead author of the new book, Corporate Explorer: How Corporations Beat Startups at the Innovation Game, and won the Best Article Award in 2020 for his article with Charles O'Reilly in the California Management Review, 3 Stages of Disruptive Innovation. Andy has 25 years of consulting experience as both an external and internal consultant for McKinsey Company, IBM, and ChangeLogic. He won an award for his work on the IBM Emerging Business Opportunity program. He is an executive fellow at the Center for Future Organization at the Drucker School of Management and a member of the Fast Company Executive Board. In this podcast, he shares what a corporate explorer is and what it takes to become one, what companies often get wrong when they try to unlock internal innovation, and some very practical tips on what you can do to be an internal corporate explorer and unlock the power of the creativity of your people to drive innovation and innovate like a startup, even if you are a large established company. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Binns. Well, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. It's great to have you.
Super. Thank you very much.
I want to begin with the same question I ask all of our guests, just to get us to know you a little bit better personally. Please complete this sentence for me. If you really know me, you know that.
That I'm relentless. Sometimes I'm relentless in pursuit of quality. My work is primarily as a consultant or an advisor to firms. And so I have a team of people who work with me, and we're always pushing, is what we're going to do for the client good enough? Particularly if it's in writing, they get really bored of sending things to me because I rewrite everything. You're going to contribute a chapter to my new book, so watch out, right? Because I rewrite everything. And that can get a little bit irritating for my kids as well. You know, I don't think it's because I think I'm smarter than anybody. I just think we're always all trying to improve things. It's a collaborative effort. How do we get things better? How do we work together? That's what I tell myself about where it comes from.
Yes. I can see how that can be misinterpreted as, oh, he thinks he knows better than me. I've been on both ends of that, but I see what you mean. We can always get better. Things can always get better. There's something that I learned during my time at McKinsey too. It was this looking around for, could you improve the layout of this office? Could you improve this advertisement, right? That relentless pursuit for a little bit.
McKinsey rightly gets knocked for a lot of stuff. You know, we could go into that. We could spend our entire time talking about it. But one of the things that I thought when I worked there was extraordinary. Actually, I found it when I went back for an interview for a job they were looking for. I said, okay, I'll go back. I went and I walked in the door, and the guy at reception knew who I was. And his first question was, what did I want to have for lunch? Because I was going to be there all day. And how could he take care of my needs? And the point is that every person in every role, when I was at McKinsey, saw their task as doing the very best at what that task was. That was always the expectation. There was sort of an intensity to it. And that's a little bit of what I think I liked about it, because it actually reflects a little bit of this relentlessness, is that I never really stop. And that's the way I experienced McKinsey.
Did you come with this relentlessness, or did you develop that, or was it a combination?
I think that's an innate thing or an early learned thing. Let's not get into innate or learned, but it's certainly always been something that I've had. And that means that I try to do some things that I'm really bad at. You know, I keep trying to play tennis, Kyan, and I'm just not very good at it, but I'm not going to stop. I learned how to be an opera singer, and I gave concerts of like Schubert and this kind of stuff just because I love that singing. I'm really not very good at it, but boy, was I going to keep going until I could learn something about it and enjoy it, right? It's just what I do.
I love it. I want to talk more about the opera singing, but our topic here is strategy. So my next question is one that I ask every expert that's here, and I always get a different answer. What's your definition of strategy?
I think strategy is about choices about how you win or achieve an outcome that you're looking for. So in business, often those choices are about asset allocation, capital allocation, resources, people, and so on. But strategy is something we live with in every walk of life. It's kind of like, what choices are we going to make? In a tennis match, you know, how do I structure structure it so that I keep things off my backhand. This is a strategy that I'm making, a choice that I'm making about how I'm going to win. And I think that strategy too often becomes just an aggregation of stuff rather than a really simple articulation of what it takes to be the best, what it takes to achieve the outcomes that you want. That's for me what strategy is all about.
So I can see from your definition why strategy is important in many, many domains. You've certainly been interested in strategy for some time. Was that also an early learned or what got you interested in strategy?
So I said we could easily bash McKinsey. And I have to say, I found strategy at McKinsey incredibly boring for the most part. It was mostly about, what price uplifts can we get on this product range, or how can we improve penetration of, insurance policies in this customer segment. So dull for me. And then a colleague, Jackie Atcho, came into my office with a problem to do with growth. How do we find new sources of growth? And it connected innovation to strategy and to organization, because it was in a large transportation company and they were wrestling with the organizational issues involved in shifting the firm to do something new. And that sparked me, because now I saw that actually strategy was a set of choices about how you go to the future, but also how you move the organization there, how you move the people and the capabilities of the people, the culture, the behaviors in the organization. So it became a more aligned thing. And that was probably 1999. And I've never stopped thinking about those problems since.
Yes, that's the work you've been primarily doing since, right? And what you've been digging into. What are some of the key concepts that you've found are important for organizations to be able to do that, to grow organically, or I guess inorganically?
The thing that I would say is if you are a corporate explorer, this is the term that we use.
Where does that term explorer come from?
I'll go into that. So my work has been for a number of years with these two fabulous academics, Mike Tushman from the Harvard Business School, Charles O'Reilly from Stanford. And we worked together at IBM. I left McKinsey, went to IBM, helped IBM in their Emerging Business Opportunity program, which created a number of billion-dollar businesses in the 2000 to 2010 era. And Michael and Charles have a way of thinking about organizations and this, how do you renew them for a new generation? It kind of connects the point that it's about innovation and change. And the corporate explorers are the people who do this inside organizations. Yes, they, what we term ideate, incubate, and scale new ventures, but they also move the system. They move the organization towards this outcome. And so if you're doing innovation inside a corporation, you are an innovator, innovation strategist, if you will, but you're also a change agent. You're managing stakeholders. You're seeking to gain influence in the organization. You're seeking to build allies, advocates around the idea that you have. And that's the key area, the key focus of my work, of our work ever since.
This is different than what I was visualizing. I'm thinking of the Dexterous organization that your colleagues introduced. We've had Mike Tushman on, and I'm thinking of the explorer component. But you're also saying that this explorer also connects with the mothership as well, the core business.
Yeah, that's right, Ken. This notion of what Mike and Charles saw about explore and exploit, the balancing of two modes of operation, two business logics, if you will, in the same organization. I talk about them as core and explore because it's a little less pejorative towards the core business, which does generate all the cash after all. This balancing of core and explore is really what we're focused on. And this explore, for us in the ambidextrous organization that can do both of these things, it's not the same as saying, I'm going to make some external investments. I'm going to do some corporate venture capital, or I'm going to spin out some new entity. Those are great things to do. By all means, do them. But it's not what we're talking about when we talk about ambidexterity, because ambidexterity is about how do you renew the business? How do you create new franchises, new sources of future growth, and also build new capabilities? Because very often it turns out that exploring into the future actually teaches your core business what it needs to do in the future as well. So it is about organizational renewal. That's what we focus this ambidexterity concept around.
Okay. I got it. Have you looked at, or you have an opinion on this kind of person? Because in the ambidextrous model, there's this layer of leadership that can stand across the two. And I was left with a simplified kind of view that, well, then you either have to sit in one or the other. What are the characteristics, or how would you recognize someone who has this capability to both do core and explore, or, explore and connect to core?
So I think you're right. There are many key roles, but these two roles of the ambidextrous leader and senior team, to be fair, and the corporate explorer. And I should say the corporate explorer is not very different different to an outthinker, right? In terms of what they look like. I wasn't aware of your work, but now I am. And I'm like, well, it's very similar in genesis in important ways. And the ambidextrous leader is somebody who is able to cope with ambiguity. They're able to deal with the fact that on one side of their business, it's going to be operational efficiency, known metrics. I'm going to get feedback on how my business is performing. I'm going to seek to error correct to improve that performance. But on the other side, I'm going to be learning. I'm going to get feed forward data that tells me how close I am to my ambition and to what degree do I need to adapt what I'm building in order to get there. This is two different logics, and I've got to be able to be comfortable with each of them and hold both of them accountable, right? This is one of the places where corporate innovation goes wrong in my experience, is that it is a free-for-all. Let's create a lot of ideas, right? Let's have lots of ideas and set the innovators free because, entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, they're never held accountable, which, if you talk to a founder CEO, they have plenty they need to do for their board members, for the VC firms that are backing them. It's different to being a manager inside an organization, but there's still a lot of time pressure that they have to live under to perform. And so the ambidextrous leader knows to hold the innovators or corporate explorers accountable as well, just accountable for something else, something different. And it's getting this alternative logic that is so pivotal to that role. We often talk about that as being the CEO. Mike and I wrote with another colleague I'll mention, a Harvard Business Review article a decade or so ago called The Ambidextrous CEO. And we put the focus very much on the CEO and the senior team around them who make the trade-offs of when do I need to invest in the core, when can I create the space to explore appropriately and so on. But the thing is that it's not just the CEO. You can do this as a business unit level. You can do it at a sub-product line level. I have come across many managers who figure out how to do this within a relatively small portfolio of responsibilities because they have that capability to deal with the ambiguity. There comes a point when they need more help, but they can still pull this off. So it can be a broader leadership capability.
Yeah, the explorers that I've encountered, now I can recognize them as explorers, is I thought that they would look like entrepreneurs. I thought they'd be wearing hoodies and jeans and have just come from Silicon Valley and been acquired, right? But I find that they look very different. They're sitting in an office and you don't even see fingerprints often in the innovations. It's kind of hard to find them because they don't call themselves out.
I think that's very fair, is that they don't always call themselves out very easily. And my favorite example is the one of Christian Kurtisch at Unica Insurance. Unica is a 200-year-old company in Austria, very traditional in many ways. And then down the Danube is Christian Kurtisch in their Hungarian business. So not the biggest piece of their business at all. And he has an observation, and his observation is that the insurance industry is letting down its customers, that it's lost sight of what it means to be a risk-sharing community, that it's no longer serving its customers effectively. And mostly what it's serving is the enormous administration and bureaucracy it takes to detect the fraud from those customers. And he's like, what if we did it differently? And he develops this notion of a digital-based business model with monthly subscriptions and the presumption that you pay claims in 2 days and then you detect fraud later through analysis of the claims data. And he takes this to a bunch of people inside the organization. And what's really important, Kaihan, in the way that he gets to be successful is that it doesn't need to be about him. He's not building his own success. He is getting attention of different stakeholders in the organization. He's weaponizing his humility. He doesn't mind if somebody else takes credit for what he's doing. He's just quietly getting about his business with a real intensity and focus on solving that problem that he's identified. And he then eventually gets to the senior team, and the CEO's like, wow, if we don't do something about this, we're in serious trouble. And he's ready to give him money. But Christian's like, no, don't give me that much money. Only give me enough money to get to the next milestone. And what he's doing is he's teaching his senior team what it means to manage experiments, to manage in increments, and to work their investments based on evidence, not based on bravado, which is another challenge we could talk about in corporate innovation. I agree with you. It's so different from entrepreneurs in so many ways because of that.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's really interesting. I love the term weaponizing his humility. That training the company, I think that's a really nice way to think about it, that you're not fighting the company, you're not following the company, you're training the company. It's a very different mindset.
It is. And it's one of the places where some aspiring corporate explorers get themselves into difficulty, without question, where they end up trying to do things almost in secret or under the desk. And the problem with that is you set up this tension where nobody's really supporting you. You're going to perfect it on your own, and you sort of get it set up an us and them dynamic. I've become a little intolerant, to be fair, of people who tell me how terrible it is for innovators and what a terrible job senior managers do. And boy, we're such a victim. How does being a victim help you lead change? It just doesn't, right? And so part of this is about schooling people who are great innovators and strategists, because we can spot those very often, Kyan, and getting them to think about themselves as leaders of change, using their social capital to get things done. And that is teachable. That is teachable. It really is. What isn't teachable is taking an entrepreneur and dropping them into an existing organization. One of my former McKinsey friends tried to do this in a company. And after a few months, she says it was like trying to paddle up the Amazon with a butter knife. Nobody wanted to help her. She didn't have any friends, so no idea how things got done. And so we have this problem with this entrepreneurs in residence fad that is out there right now. And this, I think, is just another example of looking for the wrong solution to the problem. There's no evidence that it's the talent inside corporations that is the problem with generating better results of corporate innovation. They're there. You just need to give them the right opportunity, structure, and motivation to get the job done.
I love what you're saying. And I wouldn't say I believe it. I know it to be true. But many people don't know it to be true. And there is an idea you need to quit the company, go into a garage, join a venture-backed startup. And I understand what you shared about even if you do that, you still are beholden to investors. I understand that. But what do you say about this common view? Oh, there are antibodies, and it's just much more difficult or impossible to do from inside. What do you say to that?
There's no question that the sort of corporate antibodies, or as I borrowed a term from Mike Beer, silent killers, right? Because they are pervasive. There's no question that that's a major problem for anybody who tries to do this. And having spent, as I said, when I was at IBM, spent a bunch of years being involved in these efforts, I lived it day to day. So I'm very aware of the reality of this. And I think that it's entirely legitimate. And we say building a new business in a startup accelerator and launching it as a separate entity is a phenomenal thing to do, and go for it. It's just it doesn't achieve the corporate objectives necessarily. It's like, this is a different thing. It's great, go do it. And there are some innovations that should be done that way because maybe they're earlier stage or the company doesn't have assets related to that innovation. So by all means, do that separately. I'm not against that in any shape or form. My point is that no matter how hard the corporate innovation is, firstly, it can be overcome. There are far more examples of successful corporate innovation than we give credit to. It's just that they don't achieve unicorn status and get themselves ringing the bell at the stock exchange, right? And so what Microsoft has done with Office 365 doesn't get attention. Or what my client, General Motors, has just launched in China of their first direct-to-consumer platform. This is a serious piece of innovation that they've achieved, but nobody's going to talk about it as that, code it in that way. It's a big company. That can't be innovative. And I just don't think that's true. We discount these examples. Or the Japanese company AGC, this is what was Asahi Glass Corporation, who've gone from architectural glass into contract pharmaceutical manufacturing, using their ability to do glass and chemicals and bringing it into the life sciences industry, deliberately pursuing it as an ambidextrous strategy. If you read their annual report for 2022, they've got a whole section on here is our ambidextrous strategy, how we're moving out of our core into these new zones. And they show the profit contribution that they're building over the last 5 years from these new ventures. These are real examples. It does happen. It does work. But we don't talk about them. We're like, oh no, it's so hard. There are all these corporate antibodies. Yeah, there are. And it still works. It still can be overcome. That's the core message that I think we need to spend a lot more time understanding.
I've got so many questions about how M&A fits in here, how you organize, what are some of the frameworks that you use, but we are reaching the top of our time with you. So I think people probably right now are thinking, wait a second, this is possible, whether I want to do it for my organization, open this up for my organization, or I as an internal explorer want to learn to be effective. Where should they go? What can they do next?
I think you certainly read our book, Corporate Explorer. I think that the place that I would start to be I'd start top down and bottom up. I'd look for what is my portfolio of experiments and what should they be? What are the hunting zones that I have in my strategy where I'm going to go look to create new areas of business? And then bottom up, who are those corporate explorers out there who actually are maybe at the fringes? Maybe they're people we've tried to shut up and silence over the years, but people who have ideas that are a little bit out of the ordinary, want us to do things a little differently. How could I work with that energy and those insights in order to get started? Because though mostly these examples of successful corporate innovation start because somebody brings an insight like the one I mentioned of Christian Curtis.
Got it. Love it. Inspiring and clear and important for people that are engaged and for society, I think, to activate these explorers. How can people follow you, learn from you, stay connected with you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Andrew J.M. Binns. My firm is Change Logic. And as I said, my book is Corporate Explorer, or thecorporateexplorer.com.
We'll put those in the notes as well. Andy, again, I have so many more questions, but this is the time that we have with you. Thank you so much for the work you do and for taking some time to unpack it for us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I enjoyed it.